Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel, wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Thursday morning, as I could use a bit of a healthy start myself. My voice sounds like a raspy lesbian in the early morning hours, but there are more important things to be speaking about today, as it is CPI day. The stage is set, and there are a lot of things to be aware of, not just in the short-term timeframes, but more or less in the higher-term timeframes, as everything kind of shapes up for this particular event. Anyways, with that in mind, I wanted to first put the focus here on the Krown trading application. You can, by the way, find this data for free in the link in the description below. And first and foremost, global open interest is at the highest levels that we have seen basically since June. So there are a lot of positions on at this current moment in time, relatively speaking. What's even more interesting is the leverage ratio right here in the bottom left-hand corner, which is quite literally at all-time highs. And I should also denote that all of the all-time highs over the past year and a half have been met with, well, downside price action. So a little bit of a sombering detail right there. Doesn't mean it's always going to maintain that relationship, but over the past year, yes, it has been incredibly consistent with posting those sort of results. On top of that, funny rates are, I mean, they're not like really positive. They're basically neutral as far as I'm concerned, but they are ever so slightly positive. More importantly, they're not significantly negative, which would make this a lot easier of a bounce call off of the, off of the current range lows. In this case, we don't really have any sort of major, or at least I don't have a major bias based off that. What I do have a major bias based off of is the volatility indicators that we've been following on pretty much all time frames at this point. Here's the 5-day for CME, again, expanding off extreme lows. In fact, one of the lowest reads that we've seen in the full history of CME. That's not just the 5-day, that's also the 2-day coming into extreme lows right here as well. The daily also at extreme lows, the 6-hour also at extreme lows, the 4-hour also at extreme lows, and so on and so forth. Don't want to bore you with the details of that, but in the past 24 hours, things were so damn boring that on yesterday's video, I was talking about extremely short-term time frame range highs. In this case, I'll put my little rat face back on. There we go. Hello. And so we did see that move up to the 19,200-ish region. That's how boring yesterday was, basically, which is really only relevant for the extremely short-term time frames. And by the same token, range lows, basically the same thing as well again. But here's the thing. After getting a rejection at the range highs, it is usually going to come back down and test somewhere around the range lows. So let's see what are the corroborating factors we could find for that. Again, keep it in mind that the volatility environment is extreme lows. So whenever it's extreme lows, it is just destined to imply a major move. So when we go and reference stochastic momentum, we can see that if we start off with the 4-hour time frame, it will actually be twisting down with any sort of a closure below 18,985 on CME, by the way, which is I'm trading $5 above that pivot as of right now. 3-hour time frame also going to be turning down freshly below 19,050. Again, a little bit below there at the current moment. Bi-hourly is going to be showing downside below 19,150, and hourly is also going to be downside as long as below 19,100. So we do see all of the lower term timeframes kind of on the same side as each other. So short term, you notice Bitcoin come back down somewhere around here and put in a wick. Perhaps yes. Do you think that that's a little bit more likely? We also do somewhat see, there should be some potential hidden bearish divergence forming between this point and this point. These are not like super like nasty reads or anything like that, but probably good enough for a short-term move in this case. Other than that, the only way that I kind of invalidate something like that is I'd want to see an hourly closure above basically that short-term time frame range high. And at that point, you're playing an hourly basically. So I'm probably looking at a move somewhere around 19,450 to 19,500. Doesn't really do anything for me on the medium or especially the higher term time frames. The higher term time frame pivots are still the same. Nothing absolutely has changed there in actually some time. For the short-term warning signal that Bitcoin's going to put in like a massive bear trap, you need to see price action back above those the breakdown levels that we did see coming off of last Friday, which was 19,800 or so, or 19,750 on a closing basis. Above there, then we start to talk about moves back up towards last week's highs and maybe even beyond. But for right now, short term does look like a little bit more downside pressure. Also, 4-hour Jewel has lost its upside curvature after having that nice signal off the lows. So I do look at that as, probably does come back down to the bottom side of the range. Anyways, now that I referenced my note a little bit more, yes, I did want to mention 19,750, still the big level to the upside. To the downside, what's the big level? 18,100 CME on a higher term time frame closing basis. Until I do see something below there, I still would refrain from calling like a major massive breakdown. But let's quickly talk about what sort of breakdown targets would be initiated if that were to happen, potentially in lieu of today's event. Well, I have to come back to this chart over here, and yes, we could reference the 2-day and even the 5-day chart as well, but I don't want to do it today because my voice is actually quite hurting, and so I think this will get it, because it's the main chart that we've really been focusing on for the past week and a half now. Anyways, the signal is a volatility versus stochastic momentum signature. Volatility represented by this indicator right here, the BBWP indicator on the daily. Anytime that it has gotten below 10 percentile, I do call that extreme lows for CME. And over the full history of CME, whenever it's gotten to those extreme lows, the expansion phase that follows after that full contraction has led to an average move of 24.19%, done over the course of just over 2.5 weeks from signal given. And the stochastic oscillator has gotten the correct direction on that volatility expansion 83.33% of the time. Here's the thing. This one is not confirming a signal as of right now. The confirmation criteria for a signal, at least in the way that I look at things for this particular indicator, would be one, with the BBWP having a positive slope above the moving average and also above the critical zone. So for right now, it actually has one of those things, but I need to see it above the critical zone. And at that point, we can reference the stochastic oscillator and see what direction it is in. And that would be the statistically more likely or the highly probabilistic way of looking at where price action is likely to go. It should also be known here that when we do reference the daily stochastic as of right now, it is angled to the downside and remains with downside pressure as long as Bitcoin's below 20,130. So as of right now, heading into an event like this today, it does suggest that we're a lot more likely to break down than break to the upside. But I still want to see that actual confirmation on the BBWP indicator. It's also going to be considered a rejection of this trendline regression going on right here, and also rejection of the bullish control zone. So, is this more of a formality? Am I being a little bit too conservative? Hey, that's for you to decide. Of course, I'm not here to be giving out signals or anything like that. I'm here to just present the data, present the information in the way that I'm looking at it, and then you draw whatever conclusions that you like from that. And that means that whatever wins are your own. It's not doing anything that I'm fucking doing over here. I'm just kind of sharing things in the way that I look at them, and hopefully explain them in a nice way. Elsa's just brought me some tissues, which is good because I'm gonna be sneezing all over that shit soon enough. Anyways, where was I? Yes. Okay. So on the daily right there. Yes. As of right now, as long as Bitcoin's below 20,000, let alone fucking 19,750 on a daily closing basis, probabilities do remain to the downside. But like I said, until we actually do see a full on closure below 18,100, personally speaking, I would kind of refrain from front running something like that. But here's the thing. We do have an average move. We even have the first standard deviation of what's expected for that average move, which represents where we expect 68% of the results to fall between. And that would give us some areas of interest upon confirmation of the signal, which again is still neutral. But if it were to come to the downside, or if it gets confirmed to the downside, well, where are we looking at after that? Well, probably at the bottom end of the first standard deviation, looking at a move towards somewhere around 17,000 bucks. The average puts Bitcoin at about 15,500 bucks, and 33.3% puts Bitcoin at like 13,500 bucks. We could just easily take it to the upside. I think it's less likely as of right now. Still possible, I suppose, but a little bit less likely. And what would the average move look like to the upside? It'd probably bring Bitcoin back up to like 23,000 bucks. So if you do see Bitcoin close above about 20,100, that's today's daily pivot, then probably looking at some sort of a move extended towards 23 over the rest of the month, again about 2.5 weeks from now, and not necessarily vice versa for the downside, but of course, as long as below there, risk remains to the downside. Personally speaking, what I think we're going to get is something like this. Let me just get out my little drawing tool, do some Picasso bullshit over here, something like that, maybe grind it out a little bit and then try for a bounce. Just a personal feeling here, and tell me if you agree with this in the comment section. It does feel a little bit too easy if Bitcoin were to just break to the downside right here. Feels like it hasn't really tested too many people, and it does really feel like this is one of those times where, dare I say, everyone's thinking the same thing. No, maybe obviously not everyone's thinking the same thing. Like for every long there's a short, and for every short there's a long. But it does feel like sentiment is, very much on the bearish side. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something like this, which is why I do really refrain from like getting super, super bearish. It could dip a little bit lower as well. It's completely fine. It's not like an exact drawing for what it's worth. I only define a breakdown below 18,100. Until then, short-term move back into this region and then try for another bounce. I think is also a little bit more on the likely side. Anyways, I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on a video like this. I want to be wishing you well, hopefully a little bit better than what I'm doing right now. Much love, take care, and best of the best for today's event.